Hello, and welcome to a different scene than usual, but with the same me, well, the more realistic looking me. And a completely new video idea, of course, or well, idea. It's a try thingy, you know, whatever. Today is a day that I've been looking forward to for a long damn time. I finally get to talk about Zone of the Enders. Yes, let's fucking go! Anyway, forgive me my enthusiasm, but the games are just, they're just so good. But I hear you think, how come it took you this long to get to them? You've been using the soundtrack constantly in your videos and reference them constantly as well. Well, that by itself is a funny story. Back around in December last year, I wanted to take the step and get to making this video. But my PlayStation 2 unexpectedly died. And for someone that is a big advocate of physical gaming over digital gaming, this really just hurt my pride. Yeah, I couldn't help it. But hey, this is the chance for digital gaming to show its qualities. So I did what I had to do. I booted up my PlayStation 3 where I own a digital copy of Zone of the Enders HD collection. I was exciting, I was thrilled, I was happy, and I got absolutely cock-blocked by Sony. Apparently, for some reason, my software, which was installed on my PlayStation 3, did not want to boot up. It said it had expired and required me to log in and go to the PSN store. In that moment, I thought like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's not that uncommon that you sometimes have to log in after a long period of time. So, you know, I just logged in, thinking my game would work. And I finally could get back into Zone of the Enders after a very long...
Nope.
You gotta be freaking kidding me, right? The main reason why I hate digital gaming so much decided that this was the day it would show its ugly face again. So yeah, I tried in vain to fix my PlayStation 2, but after many tries and different components replaced, it seemed useless. Which made me very disappointed and a little bit angry. Which I added on top the larger pile of disappointment and angry I felt for Sony at that moment. But yeah, I had no other options but to let the project rest. I decided that if I had a chance to pick up the HD collection of Zone of the Enders physically at some collector's market or something like that, I would do so and start the project when I could. And recently, I managed to find one. So yeah, with that I finally have a working copy of the game and the project could begin. However, during my waiting time I was constantly contemplating if it was really worth reviewing these games. Originally, I was thinking about doing that, but considering that the games are even less obtainable with the silent removal from the Sony store, reviewing it wouldn't really be of any use to anyone. Therefore, I came up with this idea. Once in a while, I sit down with a friend or two on Discord and talk, catch up and discuss things while streaming some casual Gunpla or Lego building to each other, which I always find very enjoyable. Especially the deeper conversations about games and such that come along with it. Though seeing these mech figures being assembled is also really cool and it's a very relaxing experience. So I thought it would be fun to do that once for YouTube as well. This way it gives me more freedom to discuss games themselves than if I would just review them. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy reviewing games, but a game like this is done more justice when discussed more broadly. Also, Zone of the Enders has its own Gunpla set. In other words, it's destiny to do this style of video over a review. So please join me. Maybe get your own Gunpla or Lego set and build it alongside me, or just do whatever you like. Do some chores, work, or just simply relax while I will be yabbing about my, or if I have to believe my comment section, our favorite mech game. Quick trigger warning, I am a casual at this, so if you actively watch the video rather than putting it into the background, be prepared that I will be doing some things that will make seasoned Gunpla builders cringe or worse. Of course, feel free to tell me about it down below. Also, this is your quick and obvious spoiler warning to click away for spoilers for Zone of the Enders and other Kojima related games. So with that being said, without further ado, let's open this box and begin. Zone of the Enders is of course created by many people, but the mastermind behind it is this guy. Oh, well, this guy, I'm referring to the guy behind it, Hideo Kojima, a man known for unique perspectives on games, known for memeing and known for slapping his name on everything he creates as much as possible. He is a staple in the game industry, and rightfully so in my opinion. Now, in recent years, or well, around Death Stranding, people kinda went too overboard about his work, in my opinion. Trying to understand the guy better than himself and be the special snowflake that understood him and knows him the best in terms of how he designs games and how he plays games around his games. But in these moments, I am always impressed that he seemingly seems not to pay too much attention to it and just does his own thing. When Death Stranding was released, people finally got to experience what the game really was about, and many people were mad about what they got. But he didn't seem to pay too much attention to it, still doing his own little thing, almost like an Einzelganger. Now, if we go back a bit further in the past, he is mostly known for not just putting Metal Gear Solid on the map, but defining a complete genre through it. Yet, somehow, Metal Gear Solid never was it for me. I do respect for what it is, and as a friend of mine points out regularly, I would love the story itself. But I just couldn't get into it in the moments I tried it. So on that end, Metal Gear Solid is still on my radar, waiting its turn. But hey, fun fact of that time of gaming era, demos of games were distributed in many different ways, and one of them was including them with other full game releases. And can you guess which game was chosen for Metal Gear Solid? Zone of the Enders, in my opinion, is pinnacle mecha gaming. While at the same time, I would also describe it as possibly the best example of wasting insane amounts of untapped potential. That's right, this game is in my opinion one, if not the best mecha game there is, and yet it could have been much better than it actually is. If you have played it, you probably know exactly what I mean when I say that the first Zone of the Enders game feels like a demo itself. A proof of concept that is sold because it included a demo of a much popular game. Now, Konami did give it a second chance, I guess, because the second runner did not come with a demo and had to do all the lifting by itself. But no matter what, even there it seemed like Konami was not giving it a proper chance and budget to shine and cared little for it. Yet Second Runner is absolutely amazing. Somehow it still turned out like that. And yes, I do blame Konami for this loss of potential. You might be questioning why? Well, first and foremost, it's always Konami's fault. It always is. And secondly, Kojima and staff don't seem like the people that would slack off once a while at one of their projects. They always seem to bring their A game to the table no matter what it is. Especially when you look now at what they continue to create after Zone of the Enders strengthens my opinion on the matter. But I can prove it more easily than that by just looking at Zone of the Enders itself. There, this A game can be seen clearly at every turn. The first turn is way before the game itself. It's the concept art of the game and the idea for Zone of the Enders. Personally, I absolutely love concept art books, especially as a collector, as these art pieces are the birthplace of a game itself. The first visuals of a project and the base from where a vision is created and moved forward from. On top of that, the concept art is, as the name states, art. Some pieces created in this process are just to die for in my opinion. They look amazing, can feel very inspiring and thought-provoking, especially when it comes to the work of Joji Shinkawa, who is responsible for many amazing art pieces for Metal Gear Solid, Rising Revenges, Death Stranding, and also Zone of the Enders. And those art pieces, they go so fucking hard. His work always sparks for me a sense of vision, idea and design that is unrivaled by other artists, which can easily be seen in Zone of the Enders itself. There, it looks like his artwork came to life in a three-dimensional space flawlessly. Yes, Kojima is the producer of the game and has probably a lot of input in how Zone of the Enders turned out, but I am convinced that that game would not nearly have the same soul and character without Shinkawa. And speaking of soul and characters, the mechs. Orbital frames as they are called in the game, or robots if you have to believe the game's cover. They're just chef's kiss. Mechs come in many shapes, sizes and forms, and while I absolutely adore the slow, heavy, impactful giants category, Zone of the Enders opted for the quick, nimble, still giant but not that giant mech category. But unlike many other mechs in this category, orbital frames feel a lot different, as to me they are more than just mechs. Each orbital frame you meet in the game is more like its own character. You don't speak of a robot, a mech or orbital frame. You speak of Jethuti, Anubis, Neith, Arjet, and so on. This idea of the orbital frames being characters is further supported by the characters themselves, as they address each orbital frame as a character. And of course their unique, awesome design strongly emphasizes on this aspect as well. Their names and looks are directly from or derived from Egyptian mythos, which is something I didn't know I wanted until it was given to me. I mean, come on, mechs that resemble Egyptian gods? What is there to hate? You can only love that. Now of course, these mechs got a little bit of that trademark Kojima love as well. If you are familiar with his work, you know that he places certain types of jokes in every bit of his work. Taking a dump in Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. The locker scene in Metal Gear Solid 2, Quiet's need to breathe through her skin. Using your own excrements as weapons in Death Stranding. The list goes on and on and on, and it makes me suspect that he designs games just to put these jokes in. So what did he cook up for Zone of the Enders? Well, only his absolute finest work in my opinion. As you might know, all mechs have a cockpit where the pilot sits, which is usually located in the head or sometimes in the chest area. And in Zone of the Enders, the cockpit is, well, it's located between the legs. Yes, it's a very bad pee-pee joke, and no, it does not stop there. Because this cockpit moves upwards in certain situations. No, it's not what you think. It's not because it's a funny lewd reference to something else. No, it's very serious. When an orbital frame enters hypersonic flight, the cockpit needs to change position like that, so that the pilot has a better overview. It could possibly not be meant as something else. It's very serious, as I said. But yes, my man took one look at the word cockpit and made it possibly the most iconic thing of the entire series. But alright, all jokes aside, in the writing and presentation department you can also see his magic at work. Of course, not an extent as we know that he can do in today's games, but with the few scraps that Konami gave him, he was very, very effective. A word I would actually use not to just describe the reason why Zone of the Enders is the best mecha game in my opinion, but also the reason why it has so much lost potential. It also describes the experience itself very well. Everything contained in the game, everything that is shown, told, just is used effectively, especially when you look at the story. Both Zone of the Enders games have a simple, almost cliché story premise and seem not that special or interesting on paper, but that's also their strength. For those who it's been a while since playing Zone of the Enders, here's a quick recap for you. The main story is simple. A group called Bahram attacks a space colony that orbits Jupiter. Their target is obtaining 2 orbital frames located there. In the chaos of the attack, a kid called Leo ends up in one of these orbital frames named Jethuti. He takes control over it and tries to save the people of the colony, while at the same time bring the orbital frame to a spaceport where members of the Space Force are located, whom are tasked to get Jethuti off the space colony to Mars for a special mission. Of course, Bahram is going to try and stop Leo by sending loads of drones after him, super large mechs, and a particular interesting orbital frame pilot called Viola. Despite everything Bahram throws at Leo, they fail to stop him delivering Jethuti to the Space Force. In this final moments with Jethuti and Ada, an AI connected to the orbital frame, we get a little taste of the larger story that we, as Leo, played a part in and what Jethuti's mission is. Zone of the Enders Second Runner, aka the second game, is about this mission. The AI in Jethuti, Ada, is programmed to explode once it reaches Bahram's main fortress called Auma. We do find out later that Leo, in care for Ada, hid Jethuti on Callisto. However, it was only a matter of time before he was found. At his day job of mining Metatron on Callisto, Dingo found Jehuti amongst the rocks. However, at the same time, Boram did as well. To protect his friends, Dingo boards the Boram ship, and there we find out that he has some history with them. Noman, Boram's leader, however betrays Dingo in that moment, shooting him in the back. When Dingo wakes up, it turns out he was saved by Ken, a spy working for the Space Force. Or well, saved. He is alive, but he can't leave Jehuti, as the moment he steps out of it, he would die. From this point on, Dingo and Ken work together to defeat Boram and set the people of Mars free. Noman is eventually defeated after the power of Auman basically corrupted him and made him go insanely mad. Because Dingo defeated Noman and Anubis and stopped Auman from losing control, there is no need for Ada to sacrifice herself. Leo is of course completely happy with that. Ken got her revenge, and Dingo gets a life-saving surgery so he can leave Jehuti. And they all lived happily ever after that. I guess. We will never know, because the third game is gone forever. Thanks, Konami. But yeah, that should refresh your memory of what Zone of the Enders is all about. And for those who watches this video without knowing what Zone of the Enders was to begin with, now you know as well. Now, I said this was a recap of the story, but in reality it's closer to a detailed explanation of the plot throughout the entire series, as both Zone of the Enders games are very short. They're also very sweet, but still very, very short. If you know what you're doing in-game, both will roughly take only 4 hours to complete. Which is insanely short when you think about it, that these days we focus on making games as long as possible. Yet in those 8 hours, Zone of the Enders manages to pull off a story and discuss deeper themes than most of those 30, 40, 50, even 100-hour games can do, in my opinion. What I especially love of this game are the characters, including the mechs of course, but now I want to zoom in on the human ones. They are surprisingly well written and work great in the story, despite again with so little screen time. From a young kid trying to survive and doing the right thing in a world that seems wrong, an AI that is taught to value life, a guy who seeks revenge for his comrades who were once betrayed, to a fighter who seeks meaning of life in death. Some of them are cliché as hell, but they work so well. Ada is in particularly a very curious case. As a battle AI, completing the mission is the goal and must be achieved. But as she spends time with Leo, she gains an understanding of life and meaning to preserve it. Yet, just as she opens up, becoming more human, she makes a terrifying remark on her own reason to live and how easily she accepts destruction. It's as she says,
"This is what I live for. This is the purpose of living, for those who have no life."
And in the second game we hear of Leo hiding Jehuti, trying to beat Boram himself so that Ada doesn't need to complete her mission and end her own life. Taking risks that could cost him his just to protect not a human life, but just a life itself. It's such a simple message but so strong and well placed in this story. Yes, we have books, movies and games about AI and androids becoming more human, but Ada to me is a special case. Because there is no clear correct attitude or right answer here. Instead, it's just thought-provoking, something you must consider and debate knowing there is no answer, only understandings. And from my point of view, Ada's attitude feels very relatable and can be equally debated as something good and bad. And of course, vice versa on how Leo's attitude conflicts with hers. I just love these situations and having to debate them, as there's just so much interesting aspects to be considered. Then there is Dingo. His story revolves around sweet old revenge. After Noman betrayed him not once but twice, he was placed in the ideal position for revenge by Ken. Or well, ideal? You know what I mean. At the beginning he truly is a bitter jerk, even when Ken convinces him to fight alongside her with the Space Force. But as we are closing in on Noman and getting a chance to defeat him, he starts to care beyond his own situation. You can care for your own sake and for old comrades you once lost. But what is the point of fighting, of living at that point when you are stuck in the past or only looking at yourself? When Ken reveals to him that she used him as a pawn for her own revenge plot against Nomen, he plays alongside with her. Not just because he found a new comrade in her with a common goal, but that more people suffer because of Nomen than just himself, and that he can save them if he defeats him. Now, compared to Leo or Ada, they are not the strongest characters here, but in return we got a great spearhead for the entire story itself. Because it does not have enough resources to establish long histories, Nomen as a character and all his deeds in the past and such. So instead we get a reason to hate and beat the guy from another character's point of view, and an understanding of the state of the world. Again, such a clever, simple and effective way to get us, the player, invested into the story. And then there is Viola, without a doubt my favorite character in this game, and besides the combat, made me truly appreciate what these games are. Viola is the first named character we meet in the game, and her introduction says it all. A skillful, ruthless, confident and prepared to do whatever has to be done to succeed at her mission and survive. But with a slight hint of a personal reason why she is that. You, the player, will face her very early on in the game, and later as well a couple of times. In my first playthrough she made the impression on me as a Saturday morning cartoon villain, like Team Rocket, always beating them but always coming back. And at first that is what you do. You keep beating her and she in turns keep coming back again and again. Thankfully, Zone of the Enders is a bit more mature than Pokemon, which near the end of the game shows. No matter how badly you beat her, she will keep getting up, determined to beat Leo, almost like an obsession she fixates on. Even going for the people Leo loves, just to put it in her own words, teach him a lesson on beating his enemies, to beat life itself. While in reality, it's more or less just self-reflection by Viola on what someone else has done to her. And she keeps challenging Leo to pick her ideals of doing what must be done to survive over his. Each life is vital and must be preserved no matter what. It must survive. This reveals that Leo and Viola somewhat are two sides of the same coin. One considers survival as life and the other life as survival. Even though both experienced traumatic tragedies in their lives, both, interestingly enough, came out of it with the opposite conclusion. Leo was abandoned as a child, had to look after himself and his sister, and when he found himself in jeopardy, had to struggle, deal with an unfortunate but also unwanted situation and survive. Viola experienced something very similar, also losing her parents and even her lover, and being placed in an unfortunate and unwanted situation where she had to survive by killing innocent people, children even, and comrades. It's therefore an incredible sign of strength by Leo to reject Viola's ideals even after she shot his sister. He remains unchanged, and despite challenging him again and again, he did not buckle and overcame every fight without changing it. He kept holding on to his ideals even after all that Viola has done. He even considers saving her when her end seems imminent. Viola herself has to stop him from considering it, because as she states, such an action would be insulting to her. And instead she continues to question why she has lost, almost considering that Leo's naivety cancelled out her entire history of never-ending hardships she had to endure to survive, to be who she is right now, or as she puts it herself, survival was my only purpose in life. Yet for a moment it seemed to be deemed meaningless, worthless when faced with Leo. And just before she meets her end, she just simply asks if she was at least strong. Somehow I find that extremely heartbreaking. Yeah, she did a lot of bad things, but at the same time, she's such an unfortunate, tragic character. Like she never chose for this life, yet dealt with it every step of the way, made tremendous sacrifices only to meet her end by the hand of seemingly a naive, simple kid. Yet it's Leo that offers comfort that she was strong, barely beating him and therefore validating her entire life struggle. And that is such beauty of a story for a character that has only been on my screen for less than 30 minutes. And to add more chopped onions on the board, this moment comes right before Ada's moment of saying, "This is the purpose of living for those who have no life." Which somehow mirrors the same attitude / position Viola was in. Was she really alive when she was just focused on her purpose? And in the second game, we somewhat get an answer to that question. Because Viola makes a return as a battle AI that constantly haunts Jathuti. Just like when she was alive, determined to destroy her target, getting up again and again. But while they call her an AI, to me she felt like a zombie. Following her task mindlessly, doing what she must do to win, but unlike the real Viola, she was not surviving. When faced with this situation, to me it adds a lot more to her character in the first game, even though she is not in this game. Which, that's such an awesome way to write a character, and why I love this game. It's so clever yet simple and effective. And we haven't even talked about combat yet. Which, speaking of, combat in Zone of the Enders is just, it's awesome. I've played multiple mech games in my life, reviewed some of them and enjoyed most of them, but somehow none of them come close to the enjoyment Zone of the Enders gives. Demon X Machina came close, even though it took a completely different route in terms of design. In Demon X Machina, stats matter and options for builds was a key aspect to it all. Zone of the Enders goes completely the other way around. Stats are yeeted out of the window and goes in full force on hack and slash. Which I think is why this combat is so good. Yes, it's not as thoughtful or clever, but it makes up for it completely by being simplistic and effective in how it feels and presents itself. If you've played Zone of the Enders, you know exactly what I mean when I say that fighting in this combat system is like fighting in a mecha anime. You rotate around each other, firing guns, swords clashing, grabbing and tossing enemies around all day, and all explode in a good old fashion. Especially certain aspects feel like very old-fashioned, like how lasers are just colored lines that fly off in a very satisfying pattern, and how sound design seems to be pulled from the 90s animes. All in all, it just looks very cool and it carries a lot of impact. But that was just in the first game. In the second game, they doubled down on this combat system. Not just improving it and adding content on top of it, no, they perfected it. It feels smoother, faster, and it looks even better, though the HD collection helps on that as well. And a lot of new aspects to the combat has been added, like being able to grab not just the enemies but also objects, and destroy your enemies with those things, or overcome situations of levels, which is very clever. Better usage of skills during boss battles, and even some very clever gimmicks to traverse levels. And that's all just really cool, but the coolest part of it all, and it's something I always have to get used to, is the fact that the combat also involves interacting with the world itself. It feels and sounds like a pain to drag other characters through a level, or get them at the top of a level while enemies attack you, but it's actually quite interesting, and unlike other games that try these things, it works as you expect. Especially the moving and fighting based on voice inputs from characters rather than acting on visuals is a very cool aspect in this game. These moments elevate already a great combat system into an awesome one. It really scratches that odd or weird gameplay itch that I have when it comes to games. And that's also why I love Death Stranding, as there's nothing like it. And the same goes for Zone of the Enders. There's just nothing like it. And that's not just the combat, but it's the entire experience of both games. They're like a good glass of whiskey you enjoy bit by bit. And once you've finished it, you are met with such a great aftertaste and satisfaction. I always look fondly back at Zone of the Enders, and a part of me wishes there was more to it. I mean, the concept art for the third game looked absolutely bonkers. But with the current state of Konami and Kojima doing its own thing these days, Zone of the Enders seems to be lost to time itself. And it seems to get worse and worse, as now Sony apparently blocks the usage of digital copy of the game as well. Which is not just a shame, it's an absolute shame. This game deserves more attention. It deserves a bigger installment. Imagine what this game could be with the current resources in gaming. My stomach just hurt thinking about the loss of this game. Because truly, there is no other game like this out there. And it's not perfect, but what is in it, just those 8 hours of gaming, is one of the best, if not the best mech game of all time. And that's where I'm going to end my yabbing session of Zone of the Enders, as my Gunpla build is finished. What a process it was, because I am not that good at assembling Gunpla, but this one seemed more tricky than I'm used to. The same of course could be said about the game. Not being bad at it, of course, I meant what an experience that was as well. Hopefully my yapping about Zone of the Enders was fun, made you reflect on your own experience with the games. Maybe for a moment made you boot it up again, or maybe you have learned of an old mech game that you might be interested in. I'm pretty sure I missed some, if not a lot of things here and there about the game. I could go on for hours and basically dug the entire playthrough on YouTube explaining every detail. But I just wanted to highlight my love for the game for a moment and leave it at that. Of course, feel free to let me know down below what I missed, and of course share your own experiences as well. I know from my Demon X Machina review that the Zone of the Enders community is out there, so don't be shy, say hello. But anyway, for me it was fun to change the content up a bit, being able to talk more depth about the game rather than present it as something you might want to play and keep it spoiler free. So yeah, who knows, maybe I'm going to do this again in the future, or maybe not. My track record is not the strongest there to keep pushing the newest type of content and go back to my reviews. But in any case, I at least got to add Zone of the Enders to my YouTube collection and doing it a bit of justice. I want to sincerely thank you for joining me if you made it till the end of the video, and I wish you a good day and until next time.